Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike Ritland coming at you here, going solo today. One of the routines that I do on the Mic Drop podcast with pretty much every guest is I ask them what their morning routine is, talk to them about fitness. Most of the guests have some sort of military background or thus far have. A lot of them keep in shape. And so I like to talk about that, which has in turn spawned a multitude of questions from the listeners, from you guys, asking me what my morning routine is, what I do in terms of a physical fitness regimen and what I believe in and things of that nature. And so what I'm going to do on this podcast is basically go over all the different things that I've both tried, looked at, researched, experimented with, used myself as a guinea pig, and I can assure you that there is a shitload of them. I've tried just about everything, and over the last 25 years, and I've gotten some pretty, some results have been surprising. Some of them have been, kind of expected, but I've learned a shitload over the last 25 years of working out and things of that nature. I turned 40 this week, which is the nature of this podcast, in conjunction with the social media post that I just put up here recently, and for me that's kind of a discouraging birthday in some respects, just from a societal or cultural standpoint, and looking at the fact that the average median lifespan of an adult male in this country is 78 and change years old. So by that metric, I'm over halfway. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't look at it that way. I actually feel very fortunate to have been here as long as I have. B, coupled with the fact that I've got a number of brethren who have not been afforded the ability to turn 40 years old and have lost their lives protecting our way of life and fighting for what we all believe in and hold dear and true to our hearts. And so ultimately, with every birthday, I view it as a fucking gift, a priceless one at that. A lot of people say time is money. I disagree. Time is more valuable than money. You can't give it away. You can't save it. You can't buy more of it. You can't invest it in something and get more time out of it. It's a standard that, no matter how rich, poor, old, young you are, you get the same 24 hours in every day. And so I try to maximize that within reason, Jocko, with your 4:30 wake-ups. I'm going to bust your balls every time about that. But it seems to be a running joke here on the Mic Drop. But at any rate, what I want to do is go over, all the things I've tried, both from a nutrition standpoint, from a exercise standpoint, a way of life, lifestyle, et cetera, traveling, being here, being in routines, trying all these different things. And then what I want that to spawn is feel free to post any questions that you have about the things that I talk about. If there's things that you want me to go further into or things that I didn't cover that you want to hear about, I'm happy to oblige, and plan on doing some kind of fitness and health related podcasts, at least regularly. It for sure is not going to be my mainstay. This isn't morphing into a Dr. Oz, podcast where all I do is talk about products and shit. But I've had enough people ask, and frankly, I've done a lot of dumb shit to myself over the last couple of decades, and I'm happy to share what's worked and what's not. So at any rate, I'm going to get into it. Like I said, over the years, I'm not kidding you. I mean, in terms of nutrition, I have tried just about everything. I mean, I've done strict paleo. I've done strict zone diets back when CrossFit first was kind of coming onto the scene and endorsing that prior to the kind of the paleo craze that it spawned into. I've tried very strict keto. I've tried, kind of hybrids of keto where it's, carb cycling and things of that nature. I've even tried brief stints of doing the Atkins diet of wanting to eat pepperoni and cheese and shitty, greasy, processed foods because it was allowed, and just see how your body responds. I've messed with the eat right for your type in terms of blood type. I'm an O positive, so that lends itself to certain ways of eating. And I think that there's some science, and just from a common sense standpoint, things that back that up that seem to make sense. back when I was in high school, in late teens, back then in the 90s, it was, a high carb, low fat type of diet in conjunction with working out, very traditionally weight wise. And really what I found, from all of those things is that, just like with a lot of things, is that there are elements to every one of these styles of eating that both work and don't work. I don't believe that there's any one system or lifestyle of eating that's just carte blanche, like the best fucking way to do it, especially when you take into account everybody is different. I know there's certain things that work better for me than other people, but I wouldn't say that any one of these styles of eating is, the textbook perfect way to do it either. I think that, you have to try a lot of different things. You got to be fucking honest with yourself about it too, though. Don't go into it either super skeptical, overly skeptical, where you're almost betting that it's not going to work, or on the transverse, don't go in there with blind allegiance to, I've seen all these people that I want to emulate eating a certain way, and so it's rest assured it's going to work for me. It may not. Just go into it, with an open mind and be honest, but be consistent, be fair, give it a good shot, and see what works for you. Also, listening to your body is a huge component of that, and that's one thing where I think most people make mistakes, is that they follow something and they're so strict about it that, once they've given it that fair shake and they start to see, some potential significant negative effects or impacts from it, is they just ride it out and are stubborn, which believe me, I can relate to that. But be smart about it, and if you see serious imbalances in either electrolytes or hydration, or your stool becomes problematic, or things that are just way out of balance, make some tweaks and corrections, and listen to your body and see if that helps. The best metric and guide, I think, to trying all of these different methods of eating out is exactly that: is be consistent, give it a fair shake, but listen to your body and see if it's actually working or not, and make some changes incrementally. You can't change 30 different things and then know which one of those are going to work. You've got to implement small changes here or there, little nuanced tweaks, if you will, to different eating styles, and see if that helps shortcomings or problems that you're having, or even augments things that have already started to work, and things of that nature. The progression that I've kind of come to the conclusion of is a couple of main points. Is that, number one, in dovetailing on to the, hey, everything, or every style or every way of eating works a little bit different for everybody else. For me personally, and I think for most people, again, at least from my experience, is that, eating clean, and by clean I mean natural food, shit that's not man-made, and that includes supplemental powders and things of that nature. I generally, and again, this is generally not with every single thing, which I'm going to get into some products that I use here in a minute, but I generally like things in their most natural form, oils instead of powders, or, actual food instead of tinctures or oils or powders, or, processed bars or packaged items that, that are man-made, or have supplemental things that are stabilizers or preservatives, or things that are intended to extend shelf life. I go over this a lot in with dogs, and that, the bags of dog food are processed. Anything, and this is again for dogs, for people, whatever. If you're adding preservatives, stabilizers, mechanisms in which something has the ability to be stored for longer periods of time, chances are it's not going to be as bioavailable. Now, does that mean that it's bad for you? No, not necessarily. Is it still way better than a lot of other options? Yes, absolutely. And there are things that I eat and recommend for dogs that are powders or freeze-dried things or things of that nature. I'm saying, generally speaking, when it comes to vegetables and meat and things like that, I generally like to have things in their most natural form. So, you could say that I do kind of a hybrid of what I would consider paleo and keto to a certain extent, but not so much to where I would say, yes, I follow that, because there's certainly things that either gloss over or don't do that are, kind of in lockstep with both of those eating styles that the hardcore purists would say, "No, you're not eating that way." And that leads me into one quick point is that, don't be such a fucking Nazi about everything to where, you're not willing to experiment with different things. And again, like I think a lot of people drink the Kool-Aid and get so wrapped around the axle with certain eating styles to be able to classify it as that. It almost reminds me of religion, frankly. Is that people are so hell-bent on, well, that's not paleo, and they're all super judgy about every fucking thing that, if you have a bowl of macaroni and cheese at a barbecue joint or whatever, like they think you're, blasphemous and sinning against the cult-like religion that is their eating style. And it's like, stop taking it quite so fucking serious. But, in terms of what that's led me to, to kind of get into is eating, primarily a lot of vegetables, or as many as I can, generally just leafy greens, nothing crazy fancy or anything like that. Lots of spinach and kale, broccoli, cabbage, red cabbage, things of that nature, leafy greens that have fiber and a lot of vitamins and minerals in them, as much as I can. On top of that, in terms of protein sources, I like to eat lean meat. Again, primarily, does that mean that I won't eat a fatty ribeye? Well, absolutely, I will eat that shit, and savory beef ribs that are heavily marbled and things like that. It's just in terms of the primary mode in which I consume things, it's generally, chicken and fish and lean red meat or turkey or things like that, but not all the time. Moderation is key. But also, the adage of everything in moderation, I like to add including moderation, is that sometimes you got to splurge and have a fucking large pepperoni pizza yourself, or a large Blizzard, or, have a weekend, where you're, on vacation or in Vegas or whatever, where you're just really eating whatever the hell you want. Chances are it's going to make you feel like shit. Maybe it'll remind you why you started eating clean in the first place, but there's got to be some balance in life, as there is with everything. And I generally like to subscribe to the 85-15 rule, and that's per day, per week, per month. Is that 85% of the time I'm eating clean, making good decisions, things of that nature, and the other 15% of the time I'm fucking off and eating whatever I want. I try to be smart about what I drink as it relates to not drinking diet sodas. That's been a vice of mine since I was about 10 years old. I still do drink Diet Coke, Diet Mountain Dew. Occasionally I don't drink it nearly as much as I used to, but I still enjoy it. Primarily drink water. There are times where I'll add Pedialyte or things like that, or some other supplements that I'll go over here in a minute. To certain drinks, depending on if it's a workout I just did or things of that nature, or getting ready to do something where I'm trying to augment, what I'm already taking in. But generally speaking, try to drink mostly water and stay hydrated. One of the things that I've heard people say, and I tend to agree with, is staying to the outside of grocery stores. The vegetable, the meat departments, fruit, things of that nature are a lot easier to live off of and better for you than things that you can't pronounce and that are packaged and man-made, et cetera. So I won't spend too much more time on that, but the gist of that eating style is just eating clean, lots of vegetable, a little bit of fruit, good lean meats. I do eat cheese, lots of nuts and seeds, and with the nuts and seeds, I try to keep them as minimally processed also. Honey roasted cashews are not the same as raw cashews. Look at the nutrition facts, and anything, if it's a really sweet, coated nut, which it sounds terrible, right? Maybe it doesn't sound terrible. I don't know. I guess it depends on what you're into. But if you're eating pecans and they've got a 1/4 inch of honey glaze or sugar on them, dusted in whatever the fuck else, then you're practically eating dessert. So be smart about the different nuts and seeds that you eat. Sunflower seeds, cashews have more carbs in them than you would think. As an example, pistachios, same thing, macadamias. walnuts, pecans. I like all that kind of stuff and try to eat a fair bit of it, and I do. Avocados, same thing, fucking great. Avocados are one of the best sources of fat, I think, that I partake in pretty regularly, that I try to use as a staple or a regular part of my diet that has good fat and a lot of good nutrients in it that's going to do right by you in a lot of different ways. One quick note in terms of how to incorporate all that. A lot of people like to count calories and things of that nature. I don't mess with it. Now, granted, keep in mind, I'm not a professional fucking athlete either. If you're a CrossFit Games competitor or an NFL player, then you probably should put a little more time and effort into that, or maybe even have a hired fucking personal chef or nutritionist. But for the rest of us assholes out there that aren't doing that, and our livelihoods don't depend on optimum performance day in, day out from a competition standpoint, to me, eat when you're fucking hungry. Stop eating before you're uncomfortably full, and just leave it at that. If you eat 3 meals a day because you're working out hard, or even 4 or 5, fine. Don't eat just because it's noon. Don't eat just because you feel like you're supposed to. Eat when you're hungry. If it's not until 2 in the afternoon, then that's when you eat first. For me, as I've gotten older, when I was, all growing up and up until I was in my mid-30s, frankly, breakfast was an integral part of my routine. It's not anymore. And it's not that I made the decision necessarily. It's more about I'm just not that hungry, and my metabolism is slowed down to the point where it doesn't really make sense for me to eat breakfast most mornings, and I'm generally not hungry. But I subscribe to that, trying to fast or not eat anything for at least half of the 24-hour period. I think, to have a 12-hour fast, basically most days gives your digestive system a break. It's the one system in your body that doesn't really get a break other than your brain. If you're eating every 4 hours and not giving it a chance to chill the fuck out and settle down. And I think a lot of problems stem from that. So I do, from about 8 or 9 p.m. until 8 or 9 a.m., I don't eat or drink much of anything other than water. And sometimes it's even later than that, maybe 15 or 16 hours in between there. And I think that's a good break to give your system. Having said that, when I do wake up, I do have a routine that I go through, which I'm going to go into and talk about all the different products that I take at this point before I get into the exercise portion. But, I basically drink my breakfast, and I have found that for me, what I'm going to talk about next, as far as all the different products that I use, and you can see them on the YouTube video if you want to see what the products actually look like. I've got them all sitting here in front of me. I'm going to tell you, why I take them, what they do for me, and what kind of successes I've had. Again, I've tried just about fucking everything. I've tried protein shakes and creatine and all the different GNC meathead supplements that I'd say 98% of them aren't worth a flying fuck. Again, most of them aren't natural, and I don't seem to notice much of a difference. So I don't take most of that stuff. But what I have found is that by drinking my breakfast, and by that I mean, from the time I get up until early afternoon, I don't eat anything. I just drink a couple different things with some added things in them that gets my GI system going, gives me a good source of fat to kind of kickstart a keto type day off of burning fat right out of the gate in terms of the furnace. And that's done wonders for me, frankly. A few years ago, as I got into my early 30s and then into my late 30s, my joints started to hurt like a son of a bitch. And it seemed like no matter what I did, with stretching, with ice, with Motrin, with different workout styles, whatever, is that they were just getting worse and worse. And I have no doubt that it was primarily because of a lot of refined bullshit that I was eating and not giving my body a chance to lower the inflammation, both in what I was eating, when I was eating, and then also not supplementing with certain things like turmeric and lots of collagen and CBD oils and things of that nature, MCT oils, stuff like that I have noticed a literally a life-changing difference. And I want to caveat everything that I'm going to talk about here right now in terms of the supplements, there's not a single supplement that I'm going to tell you about that is paying me a fucking dime to tell you that I'm using their stuff. Not a dime. Not one of these products is an endorsement, or am I endorsing because I'm being paid for any of it. These are products that I use because they fucking work for me. I believe in them, and I have had success for them. And so keep that in mind as I talk about this stuff. So when I first get up, I drink a bottle of water, spring water, not purified water, for the reasons of I like it to be as natural as possible and have mineral content that's again appropriate for what's coming out of the fucking ground. So I typically drink Ozarka just because it's here in Texas. It's easy to get. It's everywhere, and it tastes pretty fucking good. So I drink a bottle of that slowly right out of the gate. Then I mix in. Just in a coffee cup, a scoop of Jocko Discipline. Shout out to Jocko. He's got a number of products. Again, he doesn't even give me the shit for free, let alone pay me to do it. But I use several of the products that he has out, and I really like them and notice a difference. The Jocko Discipline is kind of an herbal supplement with some vitamins and minerals, and just kind of jumpstart your cognitive function, things of that nature. So I mix a heaping scoop of that with cold water and drink that relatively quick. After that, then I take the supplements that I take, which is Krill Oil. The brand that I use is Viva Naturals. I drop ship it on Amazon. It's a good, clean brand that I've used for actually a few years, and I like that stuff. Good for heart and cardiovascular health in terms of keeping your arteries in better shape and things of that nature. And it's one thing that I will say, like, can I tell you that I've noticed, my blood panels, cholesterol's better, blood's thinner? Not necessarily, but there's enough science behind it to where, I absolutely think that it makes sense. And my numbers have historically a few years ago were higher than they are now. Is that a direct result of just the krill oil? Probably not. I think it's a combination of everything, but I do think it makes sense in taking. So I take krill oil, and then I also take Jocko has a joint warfare capsule that's turmeric based and has glucosamine, chondroitin, and things like that in it, and it's it's not. Glucosamine, turmeric, MSM. It's even got sea cucumber for those with the oral fixation. Just kidding. But here's the one thing I will say about this. Like, even though I told you to not be skeptical, I'll admit I was fucking skeptical. My joints, my elbows, my knees, my fingers, wrists, everything just has started to hurt as I've approached 40 and now coming up on it this week. Over the last couple of years, and in switching to the not eating breakfast and giving my body a chance to work on the inflammation with these products and not eating, I will say, no bullshit, has made a noticeable difference in terms of joint pain. And this product for sure helps. Without a doubt, it does. I notice if I don't take it for a couple of weeks, and I notice when I've been on it regularly, working out hard and things like that, and it absolutely works. So there's a number of glucosamine and turmeric-based products out there. Jocko's a brother and a friend, and so I like to support his products. But that is for sure a tangible difference. The next thing I take is it's a vitamin D and K pill mixture. This is from Peak Performance. For this, there's just a lot of science behind needing that, and those two nutrients not being very available and readily available. Excuse me, in a lot of modern day diets, and so I do supplement with that. The last pill supplement that I take is choline and inositol. Sorry. This is by a company called Now. This stuff, it's kind of a neurocognitive, transmitter support, in terms of your central nervous system. And it also is actually really good for taking care of your liver, in helping get if you do have fatty liver, which I don't, but to avoid anything like that, and just being dehydrated, being older, things of that nature. It's good for liver function and good for your central nervous system. And I have found, and I'll talk more about it when I get into the exercise regimen, is that as you tax your central nervous system with hard, dynamic, anaerobic type workouts, I do think, especially as you get older, you should take some time to augment and help your CNS system out. So I do add that as well. So I just basically throw that all in my mouth and down it with some water or with the Jocko Discipline mix that I've just made up, and then that's basically the supplement stuff that I take, whether it's pill or powder or whatever. The next thing I do is I get bone broth. This is another thing that has been, I would argue, life-changing in terms of how good it has made me feel, and from a GI standpoint, digestion, stool consistency, things of that nature, which I know everybody loves to talk about shit, but that's a fact. As you get older, things don't work as well across the board, and I've noticed a big difference in keeping this routine. So the next thing I do is I heat that up on a stove. I use Oso Bones. Oso Good Company bone broths, and I will say there's a lot of bone broth companies out there. In keeping in tradition with my philosophy on keeping shit natural, I do subscribe to, if it's not coming to you frozen, and when you thaw it out, it's like fucking Jello. It's all gelatinous and nasty, like cold chicken fat at the bottom of a rotisserie chicken tray. If it's not that kind of consistency, from my perspective, it's probably not worth a shit. That is the collagen that makes it that way. If it's stabilized where you're buying it, store bought, and it's like in a regular chicken broth box container sitting on a shelf in a supermarket, there's no way it's as good for you as the natural shit that has to be frozen, refrigerated, thawed out, and is all gelatinous and nasty. So keep that in mind. There's a number of companies out there. I like the Oso company. They have good products, good customer service, fast shipping. It's reasonably priced. They do have a couple different lines too. This bag that I have here is their beef bone broth, and it's AIP compliant, which, for those, not to get too in the weeds and dork out on you too hard, but there's basically two types of bone broth for your average consumer. There's the regular shit that has non-AIP compliant, and what that stands for is autoimmune protocol. That means that if it says it's AIP compliant, it doesn't have onions, garlic, peppercorn, tomatoes, things like that in super sensitive GI systems will cause inflammation, or not help it. If you're having really severe GI issues, then I would get the AIP compliant blend and stick with that for a little while. Or if you've never tried it, you might as well get that and try the cleanest stuff first and see how that helps you out. I generally don't take it. I've ordered it again to try it and see how it is. I don't have that type of sensitivity, so I generally take just the regular chicken bone broth. What I add in that is two things: is CBD oil. Here's the Tricos CBD oil. Now this I do sell. It's the only product right now that I sell, if that tells you anything in terms of how strongly I believe in it. The reason I use this is, and I put it in the bone broth, is because it's for dogs. It's chicken flavored and it's nasty as fuck if you just put it under your tongue. So in the next couple of months, we will have a human version where it's citrus flavored or something to that effect that you can just take under your tongue. But great for cognitive function, helps with the inflammation, helps with joint pain, a number of things, GI health as well. It helps augment all of that stuff. One thing that I do put into the bone broth also is extra collagen. Now, bone broth already has a lot of collagen in it. I like, if some collagen is good, more is better. The collagen for me, again, to support the primary reason I like to take it is for joint health. Is that it's a good natural lubricant for that. For women, a lot of times they take it for fingernail, skin, eye, hair health. For me, I don't really give a shit about any of that. But I do notice, like, my fingernails are strong as fuck, and I have to clip them every couple of days. I'm bald, so I can't claim the hair progress other than maybe on my fucking back, which that's another story. But the The product that I use, then there is a reason why I use this, is Bubs Naturals. Glenn Doherty, a good friend of mine who was killed in Benghazi, one of his closest friends started Bubs Naturals company. 10% of it goes to the Glenn Doherty Foundation, which is a great organization, and so they give some of their proceeds to that, and it's just a really, really good, clean product. But so I'll take 2 scoops of this, and what I do like about this also is not that it's just packed with collagen and it's super clean, but it's got actually a fair bit of protein. 2 scoops has almost 20 grams of really good, clean protein in it, and the bone broth also has a significant amount. In this package, as an example, there is 18 grams. So what I usually do is one of these bags, which I think is 16 ounces. Yeah. So, I drink about 8 ounces, a cup of bone broth with 2 scoops of this. So I'm getting almost 30 grams of protein, between the bone broth and this, so while I'm not technically eating breakfast, I'm getting, as digestible a protein as you can possibly take in for working out. It's good to get that in your body first thing in the morning to kickstart or to stave muscle wasting and get that in your body as quick as possible. But it's not giving you any carbohydrates or any other bullshit that's filling you up, and it's liquid. So it's just a really good mix. But 2 scoops of the Bubs Naturals with the bone broth and the CBD oil. Bubs also came out with these little packets, which are nice for traveling. It's kind of like a Pedialyte or Kool-Aid almost type packet. You just rip the top off and dump and whatever. And you can add it to coffee. If you're putting a little creamer or sweetener in there of some sort, which I'll talk about in my coffee next. You don't taste it. If you're just mixing it with water, it will taste a little fucking gamey, kind of like you're licking a cow's ass, which maybe you're into that. But for me, I'm not. So I do like to mix it with something where it's either already flavored like animal protein, or everything else in it is overpowering it to the point where I don't notice it. Not that it's super strong, but I'm just being dramatic. Bubs Naturals. So that's my bone broth. I sip that. I'll generally put a pinch of garlic salt or something like that in it, just to give it a little bit, A, flavor, and B, salt, because I am not taking much in for the day, and it is important from an electrolyte standpoint, magnesium, potassium, all that kind of shit, to get that in your body and get it started before you start sweating, especially this summer here in Texas. So that's my bone broth after my supplements that I've already entailed. And then I get into my coffee, because God damn it, I love coffee. It's one of those things I didn't really drink growing up. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've acquired a taste for it, and now I have it every fucking morning. In terms of the coffee, I do just French press with whatever. I'm a big fan of the Black Rifle stuff. Fuck Starbucks. Not to say that I haven't had it, but there's a lot of good private coffee purveyors out there that are veteran-based owned and aren't assholes about it. So, I recommend you go to them or any good favorite coffee that you have, whatever it is. But whatever coffee you like, I like to use that. And then Bubs also just came out with this MCT oil powder. I've tried different sports research and some other companies of MCT oils. Do I like oil better than powder? Again, typically I do, but I've used this for a while now, and I will say that I don't notice a lack in terms of the benefits I get out of the powder versus an oil. It says that it's keto, paleo, non-GMO. It's made in the USA. It also says that it's unflavored, but I will tell you this: it tastes like creamy fucking coconut, in a good way. It's almost like you're drinking a fucking Mounds candy bar with your coffee in some respects, if you throw a little sweetener in there, which I do. There's a ton of different companies that make this. I use the Sweet Leaf Sweet Drops. It's just stevia drops. Stevia drops for you elitists that always try to correct me when I'm in line ordering it. But the MCT oil, coffee, and then I usually put a splash of fucking whipping cream in there too. I try to go with the Horizon organic grass-fed whipping cream, just a splash of it again. So the splash of the whipping cream, the MCT oil powder, a little bit of sweetener in there, and I use just a little whisk and whip it up, and it's fucking good. A lot of people do the bulletproof with the butter and shit. I'm not crazy about that. That's just my thing. I'd rather get the fat from the MCT oil, and this stuff does have, I think, 7 grams of fat per scoop. So, a couple scoops of that's giving you a good cognitive function and good MCT oil source for things, which is, again, good for cognitive, good for GI, anti-inflammation. It's just a really, really good source of fat that I like. And when you throw a little bit of sweetness in there, it's fucking good. It's far better than any latte from Starbucks or any other place like that, in my opinion. So I usually have 2 cups of that, at least one. The second cup, I may not throw as much of the oils and things like that. I may just kind of freshen it up so that I'm not taking in too much of that stuff. But and then that's it. From then on, I typically just drink water, and then I'll work out sometime later in the day, but which I'll get into here in a minute. But in terms of my nutrition, that's it. That's all I'll eat until afternoon usually. And in the afternoon, the first thing I'll generally eat is some leafy good vegetables, lean meat, some more good fat, avocados, nuts, seeds, etc. And then I won't eat until dinner. And at dinner, I usually eat, I won't say whatever the fuck I want, but kind of a normal meal with some sort of regular carbohydrates. And this is something that I'm stealing from Ben Greenfield, of hearing a number of his podcasts, appearances on Joe Rogan, is fasting, starting out and eating a basic, kind of keto paleo type of diet throughout the day. And then when you're working out hard, essentially refill your liver and muscle glycogen stores with, good healthy carbohydrates. Go to bed on that. You sleep better. You wake up ready to kick some fucking ass in the gym, and it works well. I will say that hybrid of going through that mechanism in terms of what I'm doing in conjunction with the workouts that I'll go over here in a second, without question, has worked really, really well for me in terms of not putting on too much fat, not being too lean to where I feel weak and flat in the gym, which I historically have doing strict paleo or strict keto. For me, I've tried it for, people say, well, you're not trying it long enough. I've tried it for months and have suffered fucking terribly, both in the gym, both, sleeping shitty. It never seemed to really balance out for me. And that's just me. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a fucking scientist, but I listen to my body. I've been doing it enough and tried enough things and done enough dumb shit to know when things are working versus when they're not. And I've given things, ample opportunity to balance itself out, and it either does or it doesn't. And for me, that kind of program has worked really, really well. And by a normal meal, I mean, again, vegetables, meat, a little less fat typically, and a little more, carbohydrates, and, potatoes, rice, things like that. I'm not going to, eat a large blizzard for my carb source. It does need to be a relatively clean, either complex or simple with fruit or something like that. But, and kind of have, whatever you want, as much as you want, whatever. Now, I'm going to couple that with, you've got to be working out hard. If I'm not working out hard, especially several days in a row, then I won't eat a bunch of carbs at night. And that's the one thing where people, may fuck up on is, if you're not, getting after it in the gym and training hard and being dynamic and being an animal about it, then you want to be careful with that, or you are going to pack on some fat that you don't want. But if you are working out hard, again, for me, where I'm at in my life, that works really, really well for balancing, a good fast for half the day, starting out, stoving the fuel with good fats and no carbohydrates for most of the day, go into the gym with my liver and muscle tissue glycogen stores are nice and full, so I can work out hard. I feel dynamic and strong and like a fucking beast in the gym. Once that's depleted, then, several hours, another 5, 6, 7 hours goes by to burn fat and continue to run off of that to stay lean. And then I refill all of that at the end of the day, which makes me sleep really, really fucking well, which, again, I noticed on strict paleo and super low carb for extended periods of time, I just sleep like shit on it. And so, again, that has worked really, really well for me, and something that's taken a number of years to kind of refine and get to the point where that's made sense and worked for me. So that's kind of the style of it. Now, I'm going to talk about working out next as we wrap this up. That's kind of the second half of that coin, is the workouts. So Same thing is that, everything works a little bit different for everybody. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on your genetics. It depends on where you're at in life, your age, how much time you have, how much sleep you're getting, how much stress you're under, what your fucking work schedule is like. Are you a single parent? I mean, there are a host of variables that are going to dictate your ability to implement these things and the efficacy with which you can implement them. And so keep that in mind, is that if a lot of these other areas in your life are taking up a shitload of your time and bandwidth, memory wise and cognitive function wise and attention wise, stress wise, you may have to throttle it back a little bit. But growing up, high school in the 90s, I had the standard, again, low carb or high carb, low fat, muscle and fitness fucking workout routine, where I'm reading these magazines with these steak neck meatheads, and I'm a 16-year-old that's, 5'11" and 130 pounds. And I'm doing finishing exercises like tricep extensions or hamstring fucking kickbacks or whatever, like back and try one day, chest and tries, back and buys, legs, day off. Like to me, that's not the idea, or it's not the deal. If you're just trying to get in decent shape, like you're not getting a lot of bang for your buck. If you're a fucking bodybuilder and you're already, 6'1" and 300 fucking pounds with 8% body fat, it's a different story. If you're just trying to maintain a good level of healthy fitness, that's not the way to do it, in my opinion. But I tried that for a number of years, and because that's just kind of what everybody did. Machines versus free weights. Always do free weights. I don't use machines other than for rehab type things. If I've got a tweaked shoulder or something, I may use cables or something like that, or working on, a tweaked knee or something like that, maybe some leg extensions or things like that. But even then, I don't have any of that shit at my house. I have a CrossFit style garage gym here at the house that I walk by every day, 10 times a day, and hold myself accountable to it. CrossFit, great program. I got my level 1 certification way the fuck back in early 2005 at the headquarters, back before anybody even really knew what it was, and did it really, really religiously for a couple of years. One of the things that I noticed, though, again, I think that there's a lot of good things to it. I think there's some things that I don't particularly care for. One is the cult-like approach that it tends to take on in some ways, and that people are blindly allegiant to it. To a fault, to where they injure themselves. In my opinion, working on, say, the snatch, everybody likes to chuckle about the fucking snatch, don't they? But why do I not want to work on the snatch? Well, that sounds like a personal problem. No. So here's my take, is that when it's things like that, that dynamic of a movement, like if you didn't grow up, doing gymnastics, Olympic lifting, things like that, in my opinion, as a 42-year-old, like trying to PR a fucking snatch 3 weeks into a CrossFit regimen is not a good idea. And unfortunately, I see a lot of people just fucking injuring themselves in CrossFit gyms. And I'm not saying don't do it, but to me, like, leverage it out a little bit and be a little smarter about some of the dynamic movements in which we as a community of individuals who like to work out and push hard for that are trying to inspire and get people off their ass and in shape. I mean, I think it's done amazing things for this country in terms of getting, hundreds of, at this point, millions of people off their collective asses and getting in the gym and being fired up about it. And that is fantastic. I certainly would never dig on that or take away from it, but I just think it could be done a little smarter in terms of some of the movements I think are a little complex and get rushed, where people are trying too hard, too heavy, too fast, and end up injuring themselves. To me, it just needs to be throttled back and graduated a little bit. I've tried, some jujitsu and combatives type things, both, again, great. I don't think you should do just that. I don't think you should just do CrossFit. Yoga, same thing. Powerlifting, same thing. Body weight to strength ratio type exercises, gymnastics style workouts, or just push-ups, sit-ups, body weight squats, sprints, things like that. To me, to have most bang for your buck, like, I'm going to pick body weight stuff probably all day long on that, because you almost can't hurt yourself. It's hard to overtrain, and it's very, very effective. But my point is with all of these different types of workouts, just like with the eating stuff, is that I don't think there's any one thing that you should be doing. You should be doing a hybrid of them. And be smart about it. And again, take all of the intangibles that we just talked about with your lifestyle, with things of that nature into account when you're deciding what to implement. And just like with dog training, the number one thing that you need to do both with eating and with working out is, what do you want out of it? That should drive what you're going to do. Is that you have to have a goal, an idea in your mind as to what the fuck it is that you want. Where do you want to be? Like, do you want to be a CrossFit competitor? Do you want to be a bodybuilder? Do you want to be a fitness competitor? Do you want to be a physique competitor on stage? Like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Like, if you just want to be in decent shape and try to stay healthy, that's a great goal. That's very different from, I want to be a physique competitor. So don't have your workouts structured and geared towards what you're not trying to accomplish, which seems like common sense, but I see a lot of people doing that. They're doing shit that's not really lending itself to what their goals are. And so, again, if I want to train a dog, well, what do I want the dog to do? I figure that out first. What does that finished product look like? And then I work backwards from there. But to me, there needs to be a good mix of explosive powerlifting type stuff, but basic shit, deadlifts, squats, bench, cleans, leave it at that. The overhead squats and the snatches and things that are a little more dynamic and a lot more technical. Like, if that's things that some of those movements take years to get truly proficient at, to where you're not going to fucking injure yourself, and just be careful with it is all I'm saying. You should have some sort of combatives type training. Jiu-jitsu, most bang for your buck, absolutely. Still learn to take people down and how to strike. Is that, yes, the fight 90% of the time is going to end up on the ground, but if it ends up on the ground because you got knocked the fuck out or taken down, you're going to be at a disadvantage for that. So, just like with everything, balance it out. But you should be doing some sort of combative training, self-defense type training to balance it in there. Yoga. As much as I fucking hate doing it, or just, dynamic hot stretching. I don't go do yoga classes, but I stretch myself regularly here to prevent injury and stay flexible, and it does make a big difference. So incorporate that into your regimen. And then again, the body weight to strength ratio type stuff is huge. Pull-ups, dips, body weight squats, push-ups, handstand push-ups. You can do that shit anywhere, which we're going to get into travel here in a second. You can do that anywhere and use that to your advantage. And it's, I have found that, most people would be far better off just doing that and being strict and consistent with it than they would doing a lot of the other things that they end up fucking themselves up on, or going overboard and then burning themselves out and not wanting to do it and discouraging themselves, et cetera, to where you'd be better off just doing, push-ups and sit-ups. But ultimately, staying active, however that is going to trump everything. Is that, at a minimum, is that you've got to get off your ass and try to be active most days. There's going to be days where you just don't get out and do anything and whatever, but those should be few and far between. Get off your ass, get out there and give a shit enough to go do something. If it's taking your dog for a 4-mile walk, so be it. If it's, doing yard work, I don't give a shit what it is. Just stay off your ass. And if you can take the stairs, take the stairs. If you, park farther away from wherever you're going and walk, or jog or whatever, is just making the micro decisions, both in how you eat and when you work out, and staying active versus not, is the difference between meeting your goals and not meeting your goals. So, the key to being consistent is in those micro decisions where you are, legitimately every little decision you're making about what you're putting in your mouth, what you're doing with your body in terms of exercise, where you're parking, all of those things. If you make every decision and fall on the side of being disciplined, guess what? You're going to be where you want to be. Whereas if most times you're falling on that other side, you're not going to make it. Sounds pretty simple, because it is. It's just not easy, because it takes fucking discipline and hard work and willpower. So do that. Now, the last section I'm going to cover is traveling. I travel a lot. I know a lot of people do. Doing all of these things while you're traveling is an absolute motherfucker. And it highlights even further whether or not you have the discipline and the willpower and the drive to do this and push yourself, because it's even less convenient than when you're in a nice semi-routine in your day-to-day life at your house, and you got the fucking machine well-oiled. Here's some tips that I have learned over the years of traveling a lot is again, focus on the micro decisions and fucking plan ahead. When I drive, I generally take a kettlebell. I usually take a 53 pounder, the one pood fucking kettlebell, because that gives me the most bang for my buck of doing swings or presses or whatever. Depending on where you're at in your regimen, strength wise, pick whatever one or two kettlebells that you're going to be able to use for the most things. To pick one piece of gear, without a doubt, that's my favorite thing. To augment push-ups, sit-ups, things of that nature, sprints, is to be able to bring, a kettlebell or two, because it doesn't take up a lot of space. It doesn't require, a PhD in anatomy to be able to figure out, or any type of physical science to figure out how to do it. The same way it does with more complex movements with Olympic lifting and things of that nature. And they're very effective. And there's a shitload of things that you can do. The Russian guy, Pavel Tsatsouline, I think his name is, that kind of introduced, or at least from my knowledge, introduced the kettlebell to America, has a lot of good programs. I know there's another one called Strong First, I think it's called. It's another good kettlebell school if you want to get more advanced with that stuff. I've not been through their courses, but I've seen, and I know some people that are pretty deep in their ranks, and they're in great shape and have a lot of good results with it. So that's a good leverage to get bang for your buck and not have to either go to a gym when you're on the road or whatever. If you're flying, you can, the TRX type systems or bands, I don't typically use them. I'm not saying don't. For me, if I'm flying and I'm on the road, then I generally will just do push-ups, bodyweight squats, sit-ups, sprints, handstand push-ups. You can do all that shit in a hotel room minus the sprints, but go, take the stairs, go sprint up and down the fucking stairs in the hotel room, and then mix in, 5 sets of 20 push-ups and bodyweight squats and sit-ups, and then stretch. If you do that, you spend 20, 30 minutes every morning in a hotel or whatever. That is so much better than not doing anything. And it's also a good break. If you get in a plateau of doing very specific gym routines, it's good to do that and mix it up a little bit and keep confusing your body and not allowing it to get into a rut, a routine, a plateau, which circling back to CrossFit is one of the principles that you can take from CrossFit that is very, very effective. Is that it's, I think one of the adages that they use, it's kind of a funny catch term, is specialize in not specializing. To a certain extent, if you think about that and try to implement that, that's a good way to do it. Is just mix it up, and so for gym routines, for me, I'll do. Some days I may go heavy weights. I may do lighter with higher reps. I may do a long row. I may throw a 50-pound ruck on and walk 5 miles. I mix it up and just keep it real basic like that. But again, back to the traveling, is that you can do a lot of things with nothing if you just want to do it, and put a little bit of thought and planning into it. Again, it's not hard, and as long as you're not on the road for fucking 9 months straight, which again, even if you are, you can get a lot done with just body weight stuff. Prison is actually a very good example of people can get in phenomenal shape using no equipment just by doing body weight exercises and having a creative imagination out of necessity. So use that to your advantage and get after it in that regard. In terms of eating clean, again, it's a motherfucker to eat clean on the road. It's hard enough to do it at your house when you have a fridge and you can plan your shit, but do it. What I do when I drive or even when I fly is I'll take this stuff with me as much or as best I can. Obviously, like the bone broth, I don't mess with. I'll take the collagen powder, though, so I'm still getting it. And everything else I can bring with me, and I do. But even if I'm driving and I'm eating fast food, as an example, people bag on McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever, you can still actually eat relatively healthy within reason, even on the road. And one of the things that I like to do is I'll bring, nuts, seeds, avocados, and some greens with me because I don't have to refrigerate any of that and just keep it in my vehicle. and then I'll drive through McDonald's and get, their chicken breasts, and that's it. Or in the morning, I'll get scrambled eggs with onion mixed in and a piece of sausage, and have that with, a big pile of leafy greens and half avocado with some garlic salt on it, with all of my other stuff. So, I mean, you can do it. It's a pain in the ass. It takes a little bit of planning. You got to drag some shit with you. But it's doable, and that's far better than getting, breakfast burritos and other shit that they have that isn't going to do you any favors. Is their chicken breast, hormone and all of these different antibiotic, grass-fed, blah, blah, blah. Is it that quality of protein? No, it isn't. But again, that's not what you're eating as a staple. And it's for fuck sure better than just going through and getting the number 3 with a Coke and whatever the fuck else and being like all the other fat asses that are in there doing it. So just, have a little bit of discipline and willpower and be consistent with it, and you will find that again, with making those micro decisions with everything you come across, it makes it really doable to see results, which spawn more results, which spawn your desire and drive and ability to be more disciplined when you start to see things work. But you got to put the time in and be committed to it. So last but not least, sleep. Sleep is one of the most underrated things out there, both sleep and hydration. You have to have both of those things for all of these other things to work at their full capacity. And I see a lot of people screw up on that. They're getting 3-4 hours of sleep, and it's shitty sleep or whatever, and wondering why they're sick and their immune systems are fucked up and their joints hurt and they suck in the gym and their cognitive function is shot because they're not recovering enough. And being dehydrated on top of that just exacerbates all of those things. So I cannot stress enough, like I don't take the pH balanced water. I think that's kind of a crock of shit. Change my mind on that. Ben Greenfield or whoever the fuck else, if you want to come talk about different filters that line the molecules up so they get in your system faster, whatever. A bottle of fucking water, stay hydrated where you're pissing clear, and I think that's a good rule of thumb, is just make sure that you're pissing clear or relatively clear and you're staying ahead of the hydration curve. With sleep, again, everybody's a little bit different depending on what the workload is, how hard you're working out, how much stress is on you, what your schedule is, what time zone you're in, all of those things. But for me, my general rule of thumb is I try to get 8 hours of sleep every night. I think that's a good rule of thumb, is try to get 8 hours. Some people need 9, some people can do it on 5, whatever. For me, if I get 8 hours, I feel fucking good when I wake up. I feel productive. I feel ready to go. And it's not just me motivating myself to get in that. I physically feel that way. And I do listen to my body, and that's the one thing I'll kind of end on is all those things in conjunction that we've talked about, coupled with hydrating, sleeping enough, and then ultimately listening to your fucking body. And that if you need to take a day off, take the fucking day off. I don't care if your scheduled WOD is whatever. If you need the day off, take it. Just don't use that as an excuse of like, yeah, I'm just not feeling good today. I need to take the rest of the week off. No, but be smart about pushing your body. And one of my favorite sayings is there's no such thing as overtraining, only under recovering. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. In that, a lot of people get into a routine and they start to see a little bit of results, and then it compounds itself in terms of problems because they see results and then they end up going a little bit overboard and overtraining and burning themselves out a little bit. This is the marathon. It's not the sprint. This should be the way that you want to eat and live for the rest of your life, so that you're, not having to depend on, health insurance to save your ass because you're too stupid to eat right and not smoke and be a total fat ass and have all of these problems that you want everybody else to pay for. That's another podcast, is the healthcare system, which we'll get into, but this will help a lot with that. Don't depend on other people to pay into a healthcare system to cover for your fuck ups because you didn't eat right and take better care of yourself. So I don't like to depend on other people for that. You shouldn't either. That is the synopsis in terms of all the things that I do I currently use, have learned over the years, and without a doubt, again, it's been a learning curve drinking from the fire hose in a lot of ways. But this is what works for me. I've noticed an enormous difference over the years, and I'm not shitting you. Now at 40 years old, I feel better than I did when I was in my early 20s. I really do. Both the way my brain works, the way my joints feel. I'm stronger. I'm faster. I'm more dynamic. Everything works better, strangely enough, other than maybe my eyesight and my hearing. And my scalp. That doesn't work so well these days, but everything else is in very, very good condition, and I will say it's not been easy, but it's been very rewarding, and nothing tastes as good as being lean and in good shape and healthy feels. So keep all that in mind. I do encourage any questions you have from this podcast, things that I've covered that you want me to go a little further into, or things that that I didn't talk about that you want to hear about. I do want to do these again occasionally / regularly, and augment the mic drop style podcast with some good helpful info that if you don't have to reinvent the wheel, hey, fucking why not? So as always, appreciate you listening. Wouldn't be here without your guys' support and steadfast loyalty to listening to me flap my gums. I enjoy the hell out of it. I look forward to seeing you next time. And once again, this is Mic Drop.